channel. We are live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. I am Blessed Sogah, and coming up this afternoon on the program, Business Community reacts with green to the latest hike in policy rates by the central bank, as the Ghana Union of Traders say their plight may be worsened in the face of an economic meltdown. This afternoon, we hear from leadership of GUTA, plus hear from the Bank of Ghana, which is fighting off claims by the World Bank that laxity in the central bank's policy partly contributed to Ghana's economic crisis.
Of the other view that the monetary policy tightening is the way to go, except that we are late by their assessment, which I also disagree with.
GUTA is joining us on the poll shortly. Also this afternoon, National Disaster Management Organization provides an update on the extent of devastation following this week's flooding in the Ghana South municipality. JoyNews is learning that 6,000 people were affected by the flood that forced many residents of Weja and its adjoining communities out of their homes. We have the latest for you.
Chief figures now, 6,000 people, we are told, have been displaced. That is the figure coming from the National Disaster Management Organization.
And also we are putting a sharp focus on Ghana's public sector. Financial infractions in the sector are reported to be costing the taxpayer over 17 billion cedis, a situation the president is unhappy about.
To see a marked improvements in these reports next year, things have to change. Your own hard-earned reputation and honor are at stake if things...
We have more from the president, but here on the polls we'll also hear from Professor Samuel Kweku Bonsu, who is the rector of Ghana's Institute of Management and Public Administration, as he calls for an urgent cleanup in the public sector.
Well, I subscribe to the idea that the state enterprises, apart from those that are focused on public goods, should necessarily be profitable.
More from the GIMPA rector shortly. This is the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. JoyNews is independent, fearless and credible. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember, this afternoon we're streaming live on YouTube, and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. I'm Blessed Sogah. Thanks for choosing us. We start off with the economic crisis. The Bank of Ghana is rejecting a report by the World Bank which blames it for the problems that have left the Ghanaian economy in distress. The governor of the Bank of Ghana, we know the Bretton Woods institution, as we're learning, is blaming the BOG largely for the delays in implementation of the monetary policy hikes, leading to the projected debt to GDP of more than 100% by the end of this year. But the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, is rejecting the release by the Bank of Ghana that they are partly to blame. First, let's hear from my colleague Isaac Kofi, who will be giving us details as to what it is that the World Bank is reporting. But I want to first of all take that thoughts from the central bank governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, who's been responding to some of the findings of the World Bank.
And the fact that the World Bank is saying that we were even late. They are of the other view that the monetary policy tightening is the way to go, except that we are late by their assessment, which I also disagree with. Because if you would recollect, we started this policy tightening as far back as November 2021, right? It wasn't in January when we got locked out of the market that the MPC started tightening rates. We had already foreseen, issues of prices rising. And therefore, in November 2021, we did our first tightening of the monetary policy rate. We were even ahead of the Fed and some of the more advanced countries, in tightening our policy rate. And I believe even in sub-Saharan Africa, the Bank of Ghana was one of the first central banks that moved away from this easing of a monetary policy stance because of the impact of COVID, right? To the tightening stance, because we could see that it was about time that we had a shift in policy stance, because we were moving away from the impact of the pandemic into this new regime of higher inflation rates. Then the issue about whether we are seeing the impact, the transmission. In our view, this policy is working. And one of the things we focused on has been the monthly increases in the rate of inflation. If you look at it, you look at the monthly changes in inflation, there is some softening of the pace at which prices are rising. That obviously suggests that there is, at least some impact on the overall price level.
Well, Dr. Ernest Addison there, central bank governor, but then what exactly triggered this whole statement from the central bank governor? My colleague Isaac Oviaje, data analyst and with the JoyNews research desk, is joining me in studio for more on this. Isaac, let's start off from what's triggering all of this from the central bank. Why are we getting this response?
Right, so we saw the World Bank releasing what they call Africa's Pulse Report, which they indicated that there are some 5 countries in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa that will record debt to GDP ratios above 100%. And so if you look at these 5 countries that they mentioned, Ghana was one of them, I think number 4. Ghana's debt to GDP ratio by the end of 2022 is projected to hit more than 104 percent of GDP. Which is supposed to come down to some 99.1% by next year, 2023. And in the election year, the World Bank is projecting that this will also go up. But they gave some reasons. They gave 3 reasons why this is happening. First one, they mentioned the depreciation cedi, and they also mentioned the widening deficit, budget deficit, and also the inflation rate that they also mentioned as one of the key factors. But they went ahead to blame Bank of Ghana largely for these 3 indicators that I spoke about being the drivers of this 104 debt to GDP ratio projection. So
and we need to be clear on that. Why is the World Bank having issues with the central bank?
Well, so if you recall, earlier the early part of this year, the World Bank released a statement, and they were very categorical, saying that look at the war in Ukraine. We are all recovering from COVID-19. Central banks that have started increasing a policy rate continue with it. That was the World Bank and the IMF directive to central banks.
Yeah, but then the reverse is the case in our country.
In our case, we may say that the hikes have not been, it hasn't even been more than 4 this year. So the first one that we did, I think, was somewhere in May.
Right.
This year. Then we saw another hike in August and other things. But the central bank, the Bank of Ghana is saying that, the World Bank is saying that Bank of Ghana delayed in this policy rate hikes that they have introduced. And even in the case where they introduced the policy rates, they weren't enough to offset the kind of...
So what's the problem largely? Due to the delay or as a result of the poor implementation of the policy?
So 2 things. 1, they are saying categorically, you delayed. 2, when you delayed and you came in with this monetary policy rate hikes, 250 basis points, 200 and 150, all these 3, hikes that you introduced were not enough to actually offset the kind of, probably...
And partly that's accounting for where we are today, as the World Bank is arguing.
Projected by the World Bank.
But then we're receiving a lot of reactions to where we are now in terms of the economic meltdown. Let's start off with the concerns of, for instance, Alex Mould, who was on the polls yesterday. There's someone who's had that experience in the capital markets. He's been sharing his thoughts. How do we situate that into the crisis in which we find ourselves today?
Well, basically, he is saying that, government saw this problem coming and they couldn't do anything about it. He's also saying that the problem we are currently facing started off somewhere last year, where, widening debt stock and then also a huge wage bill and then using, financing of our debts caused these problems. And he also says that it looks as if the finance ministry or the government is clueless in some of these, measures that they have to put in place. And then generally he's saying that the measures that the Bank of Ghana, the Finance Ministry, the government itself in general put in place to actually help, salvage this situation hasn't really.
He's talking about this haircut approach on the part of government. How do we connect that to what's happening today?
So one, the basis of this whole thing is that government is currently having an expenditure, bill or an expenditure which is hugely or largely more than the kind of revenue that we're expecting this year. So it's creating this huge deficit of more than 40 billion Ghana cedis. And government will have to find ways and means to finance this. Government already have come in to say that, MMDCs and other things, we are giving you a haircut of more than 20%. Government's also doing so many things, putting a lot of freeze on some of this importation so that we can actually have the kind of fiscal space that we want. So he's been speaking. Let's take a listen.
Actually, it's the only decision you could make to go to the IMF because we've never been in this position before, never. The current position we are in, where our debt is almost 100% of our GDP, where we have a huge forex crunch. We've never been in this position where our debt service has surpassed our wage bill. So this is a different scenario, and don't let anybody fool anybody that this is the same as 2014 or it's the same as when we went HIPIC. We are in a bankruptcy mode. People should understand Ghana is in bankruptcy. That is where we are. And if you are in bankruptcy, any finance person or any accountant will tell you that we are in what we call debt financing. We have to talk to our creditors. We have to put in some austerity measures. We have to reduce our wage bill. We have to reduce our expenditure. We have to cut all the discretionary spending. And we have to realign things. The problem is we have a structural issue right now. So it is not just going to the IMF, but it's more of a look into the causes of our current predicament. And we need all the finance people and the economists working together to fix this problem. The government was out of control of how to run the economy long ago. It's not currently. And that's why we're in this predicament. And they have no options. And that's why they have gone to the IMF, because the only option they have is to reduce our debt service. They don't have any options of increasing the revenue. They don't have any options. And they are in a corner where they can't do much. And the IMF is going to be their savior. But you see, most people don't misconstrue what the IMF does. The government has to bring.
So that's the position of Alex Mould on this. Kofi, let's quickly wrap up on this. The new policy rate announced by the Bank of Ghana. At least that was what the World Bank was looking for. How will that address the economic challenge confronting us now?
Right, so if you look at Ghana's policy rates right from the beginning of the year, the trajectory, you can actually see that in my repository, when I'm looking at the data, it says that back then in January this year, the policy rate was around 14.5%. Inflation was still rising. And then the last time that government hiked this rate from 14 to 17 was March. So it took them about 3 months or 2 months. Then the next hike was from March, was in May. So May, the next one was in March.
Right.
And then currently we are having the 24.5 policy rate hike. Now, what would this do? What would be the impact? So usually when your inflation is rising, you have to keep a certain policy rate either close or above the inflation rate, and it must have an impact on the depreciation of your currency.
Right.
Very important. So we looked at the data, and to be fair, what Bank of Ghana introduced actually had brought some relief on the cedi in terms of depreciation. But the World Bank made two emphatic statements. One, it says you delayed. Two, the measures you put in place, they weren't sufficient, or they weren't enough. So the question is, the kind of depreciation we've seen or the kind of appreciation we've seen of the CD to the dollar, is it enough for us? Because when we're coming, I was checking the a dollar to a CD. It's now around, I think, $1 is to 11 cedis, right? So we began the year with $1 is to 6 cedis, and now we are doing $1 is to 11 cedis. So on the market, the CD has actually depreciated by more than 60%. Interbank is also the same thing. The financial, the summary and economic data that Bank of Ghana, published yesterday will give you a certain picture. So even if you look at our international reserve, this is having an impact on the economy. Blessed. If you look at the data as a country, look at our import cover as a country, it's about 2.6 months. So it means that the kind of reserves we have is about $6.6 billion can only afford us 2 months of imports. That's terrible.
That's how dire the situation is, and it's all grim if you're doing business here in Ghana. The Ghana Union of Traders already is expressing worry that the woes of the Ghanaian entrepreneur will be deepened, giving the latest hike in the policy rate by the Bank of Ghana. The Monetary Policy Committee, as we do know it, of the central bank increased the policy rate by 250 basis points to 24.5%. This, we need to state, is the highest policy rate increase since 2017. A couple of months back, we do recall that Guta was on the neck of the central bank and the authorities to reconstitute the fiscal inter-stakeholder committee that will address collectively issues relating to the Ghana cities. Joining me now is the president of the Ghana Union of Traders, Dr. Joseph Obing. Thank you so much, sir, for your time here on The Pulse. So why are you getting worried when the Bank of Ghana says, well, this is part of the measures in addressing challenges facing the economy? Why are you worried? Doc, you would have to unmute for me so I can clearly hear the points that you're making. Dr. Obeng, if you can hear me, I'm asking you to unmute so we can hear the points you're making. Dr. Joseph Obeng is president of the Ghana Union of Traders. Obviously, he'll be joining us shortly to, of course, share their thoughts with us. The community earlier this year called for the reconstitution of a fiscal policy committee. And Isaac, you recall when they made that call, indicating, first of all, that there's a need for us to reconstitute that committee, bring in all stakeholders so that we can collectively deal with the issues relating to the city, right? The last time we attempted that, and we need to state very clearly that this was spearheaded by the Ministry of Finance.
Absolutely.
Did that bring any positive results?
So yesterday, the Bank of Ghana had this to say. They say, how is BOG stabilizing the city? And this was the answer. It says that the outlook, for the Ghana city has improved. This is according to the Bank of Ghana. They are saying the CD has improved. The Guta and Co would have to, assess and see if this is true to them. It says this is aided by the recent disbursement of the loan from Afri-Exim Bank. That was $750 million. So Bank of Ghana is saying this is how we solve the situation. First, we pumped a total of $750 million into the economy to salvage the situation. The next thing the Bank of Ghana referred to is the signing of the cocoa syndicated loan, which is currently pegged at $1.13 billion, dollars. So if you add this to the 750, and it means you are approaching somewhere around $2 billion, dollars already coming in to help salvage the situation. Then they went ahead to say that, and the agreement with gold and oil companies to purchase the repatriated foreign exchange earnings of about, $839 million, dollars so far. So Bank of Ghana is saying, we have done these three, we've put in place these three, measures, and we believe that they should be able to stabilize the city for people like Guta and other things approaching Christmas to have more, dollars to go to the international markets and then import things into the country. But just like I was saying, you still have, the interbank rates of, the dollar to the cedi being around, $1 is to 10 cedis. And you go to the black markets, people are getting it around 12 cedis.
There was this issue about the extractives and how the Bank of Ghana was rolling out measures to engage the petroleum companies and some mining firms, so we don't have capital flights in the interim.
Yes.
How about that measure as well?
So that's Bank of Ghana's third measure. They are saying they've been able to secure, $839 million as a result of this arrangement. So this should give them some breathing space and should give the cedi some stability going forward into Christmas.
Isaac Ofieje is with our research desk, of course, helping as with all of the figures. In fact, the Bank of Ghana has also increased that policy rate if you're just joining us. And of course, Guta is raising some concerns with that. Will be joined shortly by the president of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. They have raised some concerns about this very development. But as and when we have them joining us, we'll have that conversation and bring you some updates. Kofi, thank you for joining us. Well, let's take you now to the Ghana South Municipality. The National Disaster Management Organization says 6,000 people were affected by the flood that forced many residents to Weija and its adjoining communities out of their homes. 4 days after the floods, NADMO is yet to start the distribution of relief items as residents are also without electricity supply. Maxwell Agbagba was in some of the affected communities and reports on how the body of a 55-year-old man, Kwesi Adi, was discovered in the receding flood waters at Tetegu.
This is the residence of the 55-year-old man who died, unfortunately, in this flood. He's the first known person to have died in this flood. In fact, we've been speaking to our sources at the National Disaster Management Organization. They tell us that they've not had any report about someone dying in the flood, but we spoke to our police source, a source at the Ghana Police Service, and that source confirmed to us that indeed a 55-year-old man died. He directed us to this residence. That is the structure where the body was discovered. The body of the 55-year-old man was discovered.
My name is Mercy. Mercy.
Mercy, what's your last name?
Mercy Chipoko.
Okay. He's the deceased.
Uncle.
The deceased is your uncle.
Please, yes.
When was the last time you heard from him?
I think that was last week. Last week I saw him. That was my last time of seeing him.
What was the last time you saw him?
Because I moved here on Monday in the afternoon. Okay. How the river is coming is too much, and I don't know how to swim, so I left here early. So I was there yesterday. When I had a call, they found him dead in the room.
Okay. Wow. So the water level was at what? Your waist level? Was at your waist?
At my waist level.
Wow. And that was why you left home?
Please, yes.
When I came here earlier, I saw you crying. How did you get the news? Who informed you about it?
Yesterday, one of my auntie called me and told me we've lost him. They found his body dead in the room.
Wow. Do you think he was frail or weak to the point that he couldn't?
I can't really tell. I can't really tell.
So then, what's the next move for the family?
Now we are going to find a date for his burial.
What would you miss about him? What will you miss about him?
Oh, he was one person. He was a good man, a calm man. He was free. He was a free person. Oh, seriously, he was a free person. I could say, "Area muhanya na oni obi ani asem."
Yeah. And so be ensu nim no ya ba no.
Oh, obi enim no. Obi enim no. Oni obi ani asem. He was a cool person.
Your friend?
Na no na msu ne ba no bi ase no. Ehun se na oba fie. Ba na me ka
insu ne yiwi no hun se na oba fie.
No, se oba fie.
O ka cho so oba fie.
Oh, se me no ko twa bi twa one thought.
Okay.
No se oba fie. What I say, nti oba fie na anopai na say enra anopai na so mo te say senior man na wa firim.
Yes, they used to drink together, and then on Monday he saw him at the point when the flood water was rising. He saw him coming, here, and They had a short conversation, and then later he got to know that he died in the flood water.
Okay, into
that Okofa Watari or a dino horn.
I mean, so that I'm a friend, and say,
okay,
on measure say, Brano down. Monday, Nina Daho. On Sana, a market, Mimi Sola Machico market.
Okay. Are you wishing here now? Okay. He says they were together. They were in the same room on Monday and until before she left him to go to the market. She says Monday was the last time they saw him. So some of these buildings, we've been told by the Ghana Water Company Limited, are in waterway, and they tell us that they're actually part of the problem, part of the flooding situation that the people here are experiencing. If you go a bit upstream also, you see some people, some buildings up there, in the buffer of the Ghana Water Company Limited. There at the Wejagbawi Municipal Assembly, officials of the National Disaster Management Organization are getting ready to start the distribution of relief items to affected persons. They tell us that what has delayed the distribution is the compilation of the names of the affected people. Also, we are beginning to learn about the inadequacy of the relief items. We are told now, official figures from NADMO, we are told they're still working on those figures. In tentative figures now, 6,000 people, we are told, have been displaced. That is a figure coming from the National Disaster Management Organization. They tell us that they are still compiling more. But as of now, 6,000 people were affected by the flood.
My colleague Maxwell Akpakpa there with the latest on the flooding incident in the Gan South municipality. I will bring you updates subsequently. And now, appointees of President Akufo-Addo are fighting back the opposition National Democratic Congress over claims that they ought to be prosecuted if the president intends to demonstrate that he is committed to the fight against illegal mining. The president, in his address to the National House of Chiefs days ago, called for a bipartisan approach towards the fight against illegal mining. But the opposition National Democratic Congress says unless the president prosecutes his own officers alleged to have been engaging in illegal mining, his call will not be heeded. National Communications Officer for the NDC, Sami Jane Fee, has been addressing the press on this matter.
And concrete actions from you if you want Ghanaians to take you seriously. Number one, we demand the immediate prosecution of all government functionaries and MPP officials who have engaged in illegal mining, such as Charles Bisu, Chama Wuntumi. The evidence is clear. The Minerals Commission, your own Minister for Lands and Natural Resources say Chama Wuntumi is doing galamsey in the Tano Nimiri Forest Reserve. You don't need any other evidence before you can prosecute him. And Yowusu, Ekwawusi, Professor Frimpong Boateng, among others. This will be the first step to your redemption and serve as a deterrent to other people within your government and party. You need to send a clear signal to Ghanaians that anyone caught in galamsey will be dealt with without fear or favor, regardless of their party colors. Number two, Mr. President, we demand that all the so-called illegal mining companies, like the Akonta Mining Company, which belongs to Chama Wuntumi, the Heritage Imperial Mining Company, which belongs to Mr. Donald Ensua, a known financier of the MPP, who have invaded forest reserves without any mining leases or permits, must be closed down and prosecuted. The assets of these companies must be confiscated and their owners surcharged with the cost of the destruction they have caused our environment. We demand that all security personnel, number three, complicit in illegal mining activities should be made to face internal investigations and discharged from the various services to serve as a deterrent to others. Mr. President, until you undertake the above actions faithfully, your so-called renewed fight against Galamsey will remain a mirage and a mere talk shop.
Well, so that's the position of the opposition National Democratic Congress. Some of the appointees are beginning to react. We can now hear from Elembele DC Kwesi Bonzo, who told me yesterday that he cannot be lumped up with illegal miners. Kwesi Bonzo indicates that the NDC must desist from taking political advantage of the arduous task of fighting illegal mining.
Never arraigned me before court because
okay, so they never proceeded. They've dropped the matter.
Yes, because the evidence that came out was to the contrary. It was rather the case that I was helping the police fight the miners, and then I became a victim of it. It's unfortunate I became a victim of circumstances, but that has not deterred me from the fight against Galamsey. Actually, I was at a meeting yesterday at the former Golden Jubilee Post Hotel in Kumasi, now Lancaster Hotel. And the president was clear in his mind that this is an issue that he takes very personally. And for me, Ghanaians should be thankful to President Akufo-Addo for that bold, decisive action to continue the fight against illegal mining. Because even when the president has issued those directives since 2017, when the president has showed commitment and determination to fight illegal mining, where we are as a nation, I have consistently said that actors in the illegal mining business are so many, they transcend party lines, and that there's no way we can win this fight if we continue to politicize it. It's just unfortunate that the National Communication Officer of the NDC will take the stand that he has taken, which is in sharp contradiction to the stand of his own flag bearer. In 2020, former President Mahama was captured on video telling his supporters at a rally that anybody who is arrested and in prison for Galamsey, when they come, he will give them amnesty. This is a clear statement of undermining of the fight of
but Kwesi, how different is that, for instance, from what we're getting from Sami JP this afternoon? He says that the president told you as the DCs in that engagement that how well you deal with the issues of Galamsey will further your chances of breaking the 8. That's also a political statement, isn't it?
No, that is not a political statement the way some people want the country to believe. You see, this Galamsey issue has become a double-edged sword. If you fight it, then this will fight you and go and support Galamseyers. If you don't fight it, they will fight you and say that you're not fighting Galamseyers. In my constituency, in 2020, whilst I was embarking on anti-Galamsey operations, the NDC party in my district, in my constituency, Elembele, took advantage of it and went telling the Galamseyers that, look, this guy doesn't have your interest at heart. To the extent that I lost all Galamsey areas in my constituency as a parliamentary candidate. Recently, some 23 Galamseyers were arrested in my district and were prosecuted and were fined 2,400 Ghana cedi, which at the time I thought was even not deterrent enough. It will surprise you that the NDC took a position that they will have to get those people for the punishment.
Yeah, but I guess some would say
the NDC has taken a position that they want to be always the winners in the fight against Galamsey. If you fight Galamsey, they will go on the side of Galamseyers, use every means to let Galamseyers understand that you don't have the interest at heart.
Yeah, but well, more appointees are joining this. Charles Pisiu served as the secretary to the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Illegal Mining that was set up way back in the early days of President Akufo-Addo's tenure of office. That committee was set up to deal with the issues of illegal mining. However, after an expose by investigative journalist Anas Arimyao Anas, the NDC is asking President Akufo-Addo to prosecute him. Charles Pisiu is joining us via Zoom now. Thank you, sir, for your time. You've heard the address by Sami JP, National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress. He says if the president will be taken seriously in terms of the fight against illegal mining, he needs to start by prosecuting your good self. Your take?
I think where we've gotten to in our country, I've always said that the Galamsey issue is not a thing that we use or politicize it. Some JPS communication officer who holds a position which used to be called propaganda secretary will, of course, milk the situation because the system, Ghanaians want to see the indicators they are looking for is one, to see that our water bodies are clean, there's transparency in what we're doing, and also compliance in what we're doing, and the monitoring of it so that we actually benefit from that. Well, I mean, the citizens are also looking for us to protect the environment in terms of the economy and the ecology as well, and then also save it for the future. So, I mean, they'll milk the situation. And for me, the NDC, anything that would actually help them come to power, they will use it. Now,
so what you're saying is this is the usual political gimmick by the NDC. And while you talk to us, Charles, you'd have to be a bit steady so we don't have your camera shaking from time to time.
So basically, they're milking the situation. By milking the situation, I mean that this is a political party that wants to win power, so they would say anything to, sway voters to their side. But I am saying that it shouldn't have gotten to this point, in the sense that, 6 years down the line, the president formed the interministerial committee to actually deal with the menace. And then there was this Anas thing, that which I defended up until now. But you realize that in the first 4-year term, I kept mute about certain things. Because in our society, we have a situation where you think that they're adults and stuff like that, and then there are certain things that when you're entrusted with certain positions, you don't actually come out and then speak, because you first of all have to think about the nation and the way things are going. So I thought, okay, maybe I should keep mute and all that. But if you realize, if you actually look at the situation, ever since this Galamsey thing came, I stepped aside. But stepping aside, I shouldn't even be commenting about it. But every time that there's an issue about it, I come out to speak. This should tell you that I have nothing to hide whatsoever. But my bone of contention is the chairman of the committee. Because I've seen the president going back and forth. He and I were entrusted with a certain job. We're given the mandate to actually do something. I've never had Professor Frimpong come out to say something. And I think that for them, the adults, they should leave something for us, the next generation, to actually hold on to. And I'm not saying that for Professor Frimpong, because 500 excavators and all that, that statement was reckless, and it wasn't true.
I recall at the time when all of this started, you stepped aside for investigations to be carried out. We're not sure if that is conclusive.
What was conclusive?
What exactly were you told? After that whole event, what decision did the president take on this? Because at least that's not public to us, so we're not too sure of what may have happened.
That's not the crux of this discussion. The crux of it is that the police did their investigation and exonerated me. The special prosecutor carried out his investigations as well. But I feel that, for example, the former special prosecutor, Martin Amitu, he was the country duty of care as well. Because the investigation that he carried out, I believe that he came out, and the statement that I issued yesterday, he said that there was an issue of identity. And at that time, he actually invited everybody. So I would wish to see the handover report that he gave to the new special prosecutor, who was the lawyer for Anas in that matter. You get my point. So all I'm saying is that the chairman of the committee, everybody knew the job that we were given, okay, we were supposed to ensure that we sanitize it. So I owe a duty of care to my energy. He owes a duty of care. He came out to say that 500 excavators of the economy, which wasn't true. And you realize that I issued a statement yesterday that in 2019, when he came out to talk about 500 excavators, I wrote to him. I didn't go public and copied all the members of the committee. If I had anything to hide, I wouldn't have even written to him. And I shared that letter yesterday. All I'm saying is that Professor Frimpong, if he's got nothing to hide, should come out, because enough of Charles, and then where I know that I've done nothing wrong, my job was to actually serve my nation, and I did it to the best of my knowledge, and I was vilified and all that, but I kept mute. Now, the NDC are milking the situation because somebody mentioned 500 excavators, which in fact wasn't true. It wasn't true. You understand? So if Professor Propomwate knows that he hasn't been negligent, then he comes out to say, if he's negligent, come back, apologize to the nation and say that there was nothing like 500 excavators, which I did explain yesterday. And also all the things that are happening in the country. Because the whole integrity of the interministerial committee was tainted. And he, as a chairman that I worked with, knew that I did nothing. At a point, he came out to say that Charles Bishop was the one and who did certain things and all that, and I wasn't expecting that from him. And you realize I kept mute because the most important thing was not about being on Professor Propomwa. It was about our nation, that the right thing must be done. So if Charles Bishop was going to be sacrificed for our water bodies to be clean, and then people to have the mining sector to be sent, and then so be it. But I've waited for years and it's not happening. And I think I need to come out to clear my name well. And now everything that I know, I have come out to speak it because I've sat back and watched what is actually happening, and nobody's coming out to say the truth pertaining to the Anas issue. Anas never came out with any video. Everything was orchestrated for my party people and all that, which is fine. But I'm saying that this issue of Galamsey, you understand, if it needs to be solved, we shouldn't give the NDC the mileage to even talk. Because the roadmap that Professor Propomwate led as chairman and me, the secretary, and 10 cabinet ministers to put together, I think is the solution.
So if you say that, the NDC will come at you because they would say you're setting double standards. Your flag bearer at the time, now President of the Republic, made it a political matter. So clearly, you can tell that it will continue to be a political issue going into the next elections, and that's why, of course, as a political party, they would capitalize on it. I'm interested now in the issue about the police report. How about making excerpts of it and the portions that exonerate you public? Are you open to that?
Sorry.
Charles, I'm just, yes, I'm talking about the aspect, the need to make the public, the police report public, portions of it that exonerate you. Exactly what are the details? Because these are just matters we are hearing of in the public.
No, I don't think that's the crux of the matter, really, because the police exonerated me. I mean, you, as the fourth estate of the realm, you can also write to the police and get your findings. You understand?
Yeah, but you are telling me, I'm taking your word for it. You're telling me that the Ghana Police Service exonerated you. What was captured in that investigation? You'll be challenged to that, isn't it?
To what?
As to what exactly the police, position was on the matter.
No, okay. The police report said I did not circumvent any procedures, and then basically exonerating me. Anas never came forward with the videos that were expected from him and all that. So basically, the police went out.
And you're sure this is contained in the document you're referring to?
Exactly, yes. It's been shared. It's public knowledge. I wrote to the police and got a copy from it. So I'm asking you to do the same thing.
Yes, and Charles, that's where many believe you'll be helping the public if you put that out. I guess it ends the debate, isn't it?
And I don't think it's been out for a year now. The police report was out in 2019. It came out last year, and it was all over, and everybody knew that I've been exonerated. Now, the special prosecutor, Martin Amidu, he did all his investigations. So he can ask him too. I've written about 4 petitions then to them for them to come out with it. I don't know the handover that he did, but at the time that we wrote to them, I realized I heard that in the IPA report, he came out to say that there's an issue of identity. That's the guy who came to record and all that. But at this point in time, the water bodies, those are the indicators. Those are the things that the Ghanaian is looking for. And I'm saying that the committee was formed by the president to deal with the specific that we owe a duty of care to the Ghanaian public. So me, the secretary, if anything at all, I should be jubilating and saying that, okay, because Charles was kicked out and everything, these things were plotted against me, whatever was happening, I should be happy. But I'm thinking about the next generation. And that is the fact that something like that was done to me doesn't mean that I should sit and look and watch things happening. Because It's a 4-year term for the president, and we are in the second term now. So there's a certain legacy that we have to leave for the president and everyone else that's served in the government. I don't want my name to be attached to corruption. I don't want the president's presidency to attach to corruption. If it is true, then it is. But it wasn't true. So we've created something to exist. And I've been saying that we, as a member of the committee, the secretary, and Professor Martin, we owe a duty of care. And that 500 excavators that were mentioned, we never had it. And the statement I brought out yesterday testifies that.
In fact, Charles, because we don't have all of the time, let me round off with you on 2 issues. I'll ask you about your colleague in the NPP, Chairman Wontumi. He's come up. But before that, would you call for an independent probe by the Office of the Special Prosecutor into all of the names and appointees that have come up as a way of clearing the names, if indeed they are clean as you're pointing us to?
Which names?
Yeah, I mean, all the appointees mentioned by the NDC as having involved themselves in some way of a sort in activities of illegal mining.
In my introduction, I said that they'll propagate it, they'll use it, and you milk the situation. Any citizen who feels that something should go to the special prosecutor can write to the special prosecutor to do that. For me, I have Martin Ahmed, I went before him several times. I gave my statement. Anybody who was supposed to be invited was invited. So I think we need to look at it individually. But what I'm trying to say is that the NDC are actually coming on a premise without facts. For example, if President Mahama says that I'm going to return all excavators to all seized excavators to those whose excavators have been confiscated. In the first week, we don't have 500 excavators. We didn't have that. So President Mahama is wrong. So he doesn't have any business coming to be president of Ghana again, because if you're going to be the president of Ghana, then you have to have your facts right. Number two, Sami Defi said, I was actually demanding money and all that. You realize that it is propaganda. So I don't think we should dwell on it. The indicators that Ghanaians are looking for, and now it is not the time for us to do politics with it. I've said that Galamsey is the only area that you do not find political colors. It is the money that brings people together. And I'm saying that let's look at it as a partisan approach, because you see, all those doing it, be it politicians, pastors, chiefs, and all that, okay? When you go to the mining site, you don't find them there. They are living in Accra and then do whatever, the big cities, and drinking Baltic water and all that. And those people that get arrested only get out, you understand? So it's a matter of actually dealing with it. Let's dwell on the roadmap that the president brought and then go through it page by page. That is the benchmark that we must.
Yeah, so let's get to it. Let's be objective. Have you heard of the name Entry Bosiako? Of course, Chairman Wontumi, as we popularly know him. This is someone who happens to be a stalwart of the New Patriotic Party. How come that it's taking us so long for us to know that he's been illegally mining in the Tano Forest Reserve, and your interministerial committee was unable to detect that for all these years?
Where's the premise? When did he start mining? Did you have that information?
Regardless, you know him so well.
No, but the question you're asking me means that you know when he started mining. At the time that the interministerial committee was doing its work, we had no idea that there was certain things like that. Because I remember that concession, I went there with the team, and then we took drone footage of that. And I remember when we went there, we seized 2 excavators, 2 high-touch excavators. They were orange in color, and we brought them to Accra. I've been there.
And they all belong to the same individual, correct?
No, at that time I do not know, because you see, when you go on the site, that's what I'm saying, that if it's a pastor, a politician doing Galamsey, when you go on the site, you cannot arrest the person. At the time that we went there, Wontumi said, no, you don't want Wontumi. When President Akufo-Addo's government started and there was a ban, he came to the office and said to me that he's not going to indulge in mining until after the ban is lifted. And that when the ban is lifted, you know the way he speaks, when the ban is lifted, he's going to make sure that he shares all the concessions in Ghana. You know him the way. I took that as he was joking, that you understand. So for me, to the best of my knowledge, we did not see him mining. All I'm saying is that I went to that site, seized 2 excavators, and I remember when I spoke to him, he said I'd take them to Accra because it does not belong to me, and somebody is mining illegally on that site. That's what we told. And I'm saying that too. I have photos of it. I can share them with you. Through Hitachi machine. And there was a report to that. That was written by Francis Asidi Abu. You understand? So all I'm saying is that whatever we're doing in this Galamsey thing, we owe a duty of care to this nation. And I'm saying it, and I'm reiterating on it that Professor Mpumbati should come out with the truth. 500 excavators and things that happen. He should speak, because Ghanaians are looking at me. He has a credibility capital. He needs to come out, because you don't sit there for somebody's reputation to be destroyed when in fact you know the truth. It shouldn't happen. And I'm sad because the NDC have gotten something to talk about, which in fact they shouldn't, adhere to what the president has tasked us to do.
Anyway, Charles, we'll meet again definitely to extend the conversation, but for now, let's leave it here. Thank you, Charles Bisu, former Secretary to the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. We'll get to some other reports we are hearing of in the Ashanti region, but the Ghana Union of Traders is also concerned that the mining sector is being hijacked by foreigners. Joining us now via Zoom is Dr. Joseph Obeng. He happens to be president of the Ghana Union of Traders, and in fact they are also raising some issues about the economic meltdown. So we'll box all of the issues together. Dr. Obeng, thank you and welcome to the Pulse.
I hope this time you can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear. So let's start off, since we're talking about this issue of illegal mining. Earlier, you issued a statement indicating clearly that some of the sectors, the extractive specifically, the mining sector, was being hijacked by foreigners, a reason for which we're experiencing, for instance, the meltdown in our economy. So take it off on the issue of illegal mining, and then we delve into the economy.
Okay. It's very important to note that if even we talk about Galamsey, you will recall that Galamsey have been there in the past, so many years ago, and it was not even affecting our water bodies. Galamsey have been there so many years. But when the foreigners, the Chinese, started coming with their chamfai and all that, that's where the Ghanaians started to know that technology of applying the chamfais in their rivers and all that. So the influx of foreigners in that industry have created a lot of mess for the country. And that's why we have to make everything possible to uproot the influx of these Chinese. I don't know how they are able to come here, because they say that they come here in connivance with some Ghanaian counterparts and all that. So laws have to be revised. And if you have to make sure that they are not here, or even the use of chamfai itself is not even conducive for mining, then we have to use the law to revise and streamline the activities of mining in this country.
Right. I recall that in the statement you issued earlier, you were talking about the fact that there's capital flight, where all of these foreigners, in the end, take the dollars out of the economy, and it's partly accounting for where we are today. How so?
Yeah, because you recall that when President Akufo-Addo came, he went to Dubai or some sort, and they noticed that the bulk of the gold that goes there, about 7 billion, yet we have only 2 billion that is recorded here. That's what we call capital flight. So how were they able to even export the gold without us even recording the figures, without us getting the tax, and they were able to smuggle them all out? So when we say that the dominance of foreigners in the extractive and then the juiciest part of our economy is having a toll on our economy, it is very true. And so even the Galamsey issue is a clear case. We have been there, our locals, indigenous, were doing it in a small manner and all that. And these foreigners came, and then they made the Galamsey even bigger as a huge industry, brought machinery that destroyed water bodies and all that. Because otherwise this thing wasn't there till they came
in. But be it as it may,
we don't see money that turns up also.
Right. And be it as it may, we are facing that economic challenge. And here we are. The Bank of Ghana is increasing its policy rate, the highest since 2017. At the time it was increased, just a couple of months back, you issued that statement saying it was going to crowd out or affect the business community. How are you receiving all of this and knowing or learning of this new policy approach by the World Bank? You say that the situation may get worse for you as traders here in Ghana.
Yeah, we have to diagnose what our problem is, and then we have to find an appropriate solution. We are talking about inflation, and that we wanted to minimize inflation by using the monetary policy rate to cap up excess liquidity and all that, to make sure that inflation is under control. But is that what you are seeing? We've increased the monetary policy rate this year alone 4 times. And if you do something more than 3 times and it's not yielding the results, do you continue to do that? It means that you are giving a wrong diagnosis to the problem. And that's exactly what we are doing. That we are having is a cost push. It's not the vice versa, where the economists normally refer that there's excess liquidity in the system, so mop it up so that it will suppress inflation. And so by increasing the monetary policy rate, all that they've succeeded in doing is to compound the problem.
Practically speaking, how will this affect you? Because the Bank of Ghana is also explaining, well, that they need to take the immediate and necessary action to save the economy. You can't have anything if everything is gone. I guess that's the analogy here.
But what is the reason for the monetary policy rate? It's to cap inflation. It's as simple as that. And you've done it 3 times, it never solved the problem. So it means that it's not a panacea. And it's worsening the plight of the people. And as a matter of fact, the monetary policy rate is contributing to the inflation hikes in the country. That's all that I'm talking about. So it is not the right diagnosis that we are using. And that, so far as we keep up doing that, is tearing the business apart. Because let me give you this. The default rate in this country for loan payment is going to go up. Most people started the year with 20% interest rate. And now the same loan is to cough about 38%. Because once they've raised the monetary policy rate to about 24 point something, it means that it's going to trickle down to the interest rate, and it will, the banks are very responsive when it comes to this. And then it's going to go to about beyond 35%, going to about 40%. And who is to bear this at this time? And Bank of Ghana is to be blamed for all the problems that we are facing now.
When you raise that point, and Doc, when you raise that point, the central bank governor has spoken on it. He says, well, don't blame us because we are fixing the problem.
No, they are not fixing anything. They are clueless. As I can even say, I can confidently say, because if they are solving a problem, what problem are they solving? Is it not inflation? And if you solve it and you keep on going up, it means that you are doing the wrong thing. We have to sit down. And that's why I've called somewhere that we have to make a national dialogue, because they are clueless. More people have to come in and dialogue about this economy. It's getting worse. It's getting out of hand. Now, dollar is 11 Ghana cedis. Whilst they are not able to even control the dollar, they don't know that the forex exchange, once it goes up, is contributing to inflation. Ask them if they know that. If the foreign exchange keep on going up and up, the dollar now 11, doesn't it contribute to inflation? And so if you want to solve inflation, then what you have to do is to make sure that you work on the forest or the city that is so depreciating. And if you are not able to do that, all that you know is that when there's inflation in our secondary school books, you have to increase monetary policy rate, and you keep on adding up. And then if the people can be able to contain it or not, businesses are dying. Because we are talking about the banking industry. You know how people have been convinced before we started trading with the banks. Before then, people were putting their monies under the bed. And then we've come this far, and people have understood banking. And now we are working so hard to, because people are going to default their payments, and nobody should begrudge them. You started the year with about 20%, and now God, the banks are going to be responsible. They are not going to say that because you started with 20% with this, we are leaving you. And so they are going to add up. How do you pay if the money is so big? It means that it's going to compound your problem, and it runs it into bankruptcy. It's very unfortunate. We should sit down.
The last time you held a press briefing, you indicated that there was a need for a dialogue. Government then responded by coming to the dialogue table through the Council of State. I recall you meeting the Council of State, and the Council of State obviously is spearheading that dialogue that you are calling for between business community and the government. How is that negotiation going on? And am I getting a sense that it's not positive in terms of the outcomes?
I would say that it's not positive because it's about 2 months now. As you may recall, when we wanted to embark on our demonstration, and then Council and that we have all possible reasons why the problem solutions also. And we give him the meeting with the Council of State. We are waiting because we are discussing. We have to run out when the IMF came. So most players went on meetings, and so probably next week we have to conclude with the Council of State.
Okay, so let me get you clear. Let me get you clear on that point. So what you are telling us now, is that engagement, the negotiation you entered with the Council of State will wrap up next week.
That's what we've been told. The committee that we are working.
So what practically? What have you come? What have you agreed on? Practically speaking, what did you agree on with government as part of the measures to either cushion indigenous Ghanaian businesses? Dr. Oben, are you with me? I'm just asking practically what you have agreed on with government. What did you agree on with government?
Some of the things that is mitigating against our plight. Mm-hmm. And so regarding the foreign exchange, the interest rate and all that. And we gave so many reasons. And we said that we can use the investment laws and other laws to contain this situation. And that we have outlined all these things with Council of State, and they give it to the different institutions that this information is needed. And that they have to come, we have to come and then finish up with this report and then give them maybe report, the overall report, and then they can use it or adopt it and start working with it. And that's what we are in waiting. Okay. And then Bank of Ghana is still increasing the monetary policy rate because we have also complained against that they cannot use it as a solution, and that what they have to use as a solution is to make sure that they manage the currency well, so that there should be a stability in the depreciation the cedi, okay, rather than the problem that we face. Otherwise, they can use the monetary policy rate increase to solve inflation. So we've given so many diverse, and then some things that I cannot say on air, okay, that they might use to solve this situation.
Okay, we need to go, but as we wrap up, if things continue the way they are going, what's the option for Guta? Finally,
it means that we have to listen to what the calls from our members, because our members cannot wait again. Let me tell you what is happening now in the country now, from the importers, from the retailers, wholesalers, and then the consuming public. First, it used to be frustration that we're expressing. Now the frustration is giving way for anger. And this is a free consultation for the national security, for the government, for everybody. But you can see anger in the customer, where he has come for his pro forma earlier quotation of about 2 months ago, and it was 10,000 Ghana cedis. He come again and it's 20,000 Ghana cedis. The person now is not only frustrated, he is very annoyed and angry at what? We don't know what they are annoyed of, but let's take it as a caution, and then know what. So we wouldn't have any option if nothing is done than to listen to the calls of our teaming members on the ground. That's all.
Dr. Joseph Obeng is president of the Ghana Union Traders Association. Thank you for your time here on The Pulse. And you're watching The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. When we return, we're putting a spotlight on Ghana's public sector. We will attempt some solutions shortly. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Inefficiency is on the rise in Ghana's public sector. For the 2021 financial year alone, Ghana's Auditor General, in his latest report submitted to Parliament, is noting that the total of some 17.4 billion in terms of financial irregularities and infractions have been recorded in various ministries, departments and other state-owned enterprises. The latest development represents a 36% rise in the cost of public sector rot at the expense of the taxpayer compared to that of 2020. Commenting on the latest findings, President Akufo-Addo is directing all heads of the state-owned enterprises, including Sogah, which is the State Interest and Governance Authority, to within 4 weeks investigate the causes of the infractions and malfeasance raised in the 2021 Auditor General's report and recommend actions to be taken in line with the laws governing such misconduct.
To see a marked improvements in these reports next year, things have to change. Your own hard-earned reputation and honor are at stake if things crumble under your watch. And there are also serious sanctions in the Sogah Act and other laws for mismanagement, negligence, and outright malfeasance. We are not in normal times, and people are eager to blame somebody. Let us not make it easy for people to blame us. We can defend and be excused for what is humanly beyond our control. But for those that fall under our purview of responsibility and capacity, let us do our best. It is my hope that all of you here will take advantage of the opportunities this forum will present to deepen and improve further well-governed and efficient state entities, specified entities. Further, I expect you to prioritize the payment of dividends, something virtually all of you have not been doing. I'm directing the Director General of Sogah to work with the Auditor General to drill down to the causes of the infractions, identify persons responsible, and make the necessary recommendations as prescribed by law. I'm giving them 4 weeks from now to submit a report to the Chief of Staff. I will continue to advocate for good corporate governance practices in our specified entities, where boards effectively oversee and direct management. Boards must desist from interfering into day-to-day management of their respective specified entities and making unwarranted demands on their management.
Well, so that's the directive from the President. How do we solve the problem and issues relating to public sector rot? Earlier today, I caught up with Professor Samuel Kweku-Bonsu, Rector of Ghana's Institute of Management and Public Administration. I started by asking him why we should be worried about the latest infractions in the Auditor General's report. Professor Samuel Kweku-Bonsu, thank you for talking to JoyNews.
You're very welcome.
The Auditor General is reporting that financial infractions are costing the taxpayer about 17.4 billion Ghana cedis. It represents about 36% increment in terms of the infractions that were recorded last year. That's beginning to raise a number of concerns among the general, populace. And there are others who feel that, well, this is the public sector. The notion is the reason why you set them up. It's not necessarily that they should make profits. So, first of all, why should we really be worried when all of these institutions, most of them, are not performing efficiently?
Well, I believe that the state enterprises are set up for a reason, one of which is for efficiency. If nothing at all, they are to be examples for others to follow, so that the state dictates or determines the path for which efficiency can be pursued, or by which efficiency can be pursued. So I'm surprised that people would say that because they are public, they should not be efficient. Their goal is not profit seeking. Their goal is to seek profits in some cases. And we can distinguish between public and private goods. So if we are producing shoes, maybe for that case, there would be the need for profitability. The cost efficiencies and other administrative efficiencies are necessary, really, to ensure that the government derives some revenues from these activities. We pay people to work there. We incur various costs to get the output that we need. I can understand when we talk about water or electricity, the public goods. But for any other enterprise, I would argue that making a profit should be an essential component of the output.
But we know the narrative in the public sector.
Yeah.
The same old story here, isn't it?
It is. But why would anybody set up a company? Right? Whether it is state or an individual. The state has a role to serve the individuals in the country, the citizens of the country. And of course, setting up the business is intended to create jobs. How are you going to maintain those jobs if you're not profitable? Right? So that we shouldn't be spending sort of, I distinguish between expenses and investments. If the state is putting money into a business, it is an investment. Those investments are expected to yield returns. And those can be measured by way of profitability, among other things. So I subscribe to the idea that the state enterprises, apart from those that are focused on public goods, should necessarily be profitable.
Let's try and do some diagnosis. Obviously, you have some understanding into the public sector. Of course, you've been training quite a lot of students as well. So we're fortunate to be having you here just to help us in that exercise. What do you see as that challenge, in fact, the biggest challenge for the public sector?
There are lots of challenges. One of them, I believe, is interference. Interference in the management of these enterprises. And interference comes in a diversity of forms. There are political interferences, there are family interferences, there are, corporate interferences, traditional leadership interferences. Now, if there is for instance, there is a plan for efficiency at a certain level, and it is interrupted by politics, by chieftaincy, by corporate, sometimes I may think of it even as greed, so that the state falls for the benefit of the private sector. Sometimes it can be a conscious attempt to do that. Obviously, we're not going to be efficient. There is also this idea of it's for the state, who cares? Nobody owns the state.
Right.
And she would say, you'll be up. All right, so
and I guess it's even the refrain you get when you're even trying to assess some service in the public sector.
Because I remember at some point I was doing something that was to benefit the state, and it involved so much time and effort on my part that people were asking what the benefit was for
you.
Because you are going to be bringing home something to them.
Right.
But clearly that was not the intent. It never was the intent, and never be the intent, because it is the state's benefit for which I was doing that. Now, many of us don't think of the state as a reasonable, realistic entity. But that is how the government raises money to do the many things that it does. So we have to be conscious of that and not think that because it's not a physical entity, we should exploit it for our personal benefit. Because we are exploiting it to our own disadvantage. That is why we'll have terrible roads going to our homes. That's why we will not be able to fund the farmers in the rural communities who need that support to be able to feed us. Right. You know, so the interference is one of them. The other thing that could be possibly a problem is that there are too many people in the system, and that contributes to the efficiency. We spend a lot of money taking care of many in the system whose contributions are negligible.
Are you by this point saying, well, the public service is overpopulated?
That will be my argument, yes. You know, because you can look at the public purse and the information that we get from various sectors, various economic sectors, both local, which is our government and the various agencies of government that produce these statistics, and the international markets that look at us. And nobody is disputing the fact that we have a seemingly overburdened public sector. You know, so efficiencies are, if we are to measure them by performance, you'd have people who are not doing anything really, but are still in the system.
But tackling that challenge has been a headache for successive governments.
Yes.
I recall during the austerity measures under the NDC, were doing staff rationalization. That policy measure for some did not even fix the problem, and we're still where we are today. The public sector still being a big drain on the national budget. So do you have any solutions on that?
I wish I did. It's a policy issue. Right, so the powers that be should make a conscious effort to look at how we can make the sector, or the public sector, more efficient by tackling, you know, the real issue, part of which is, I think, the overpopulation in the sector. So what contributions do people really make when they are placed in the public sector? Right? Are they contributing, or are they just a drain? So some people go to work and they come home with nothing to show for the day's work, but we have to pay them because they are employed in the system. Right? Those things have to be reviewed. And I know, for instance, that the Office of Civil Service has initiated this process of improving the assessment of performance, and it's having some effect. You know, there are some lessons we can pick up from there to see how we can improve the performance output that we get from the public sector. So some of these decisions are, you know, clearly political decisions to be made, and the boldness required to them. We have a 4-year political cycle or election cycle in this country. By the time you go through the exercise of identifying who should be redeployed, what was the term in the 1980s?
Adjustments.
Adjustments. Right. Your time is up and you have to go, and then the next government decides to not follow that path, and then they have to go back and essentially reinvent the wheel. So we have the cycle of constant assessments without implementation. You know, it's sad, and I say this, it's sad that people have to go home. You know, because what are they going to be doing? What are they going to feed their children with? How are they going to educate their children and all that? But it is sadder, I think, if we are not able to afford it, and for their benefit, the whole country suffers. You know, so
but if you ask them to go home, they are going to meet an outstanding number out there, because you do agree that unemployment is also another challenge that may be created, because we may be piling up the numbers.
Yes, but I think that we may be better off with looking at letting them go, creating an efficient system that will in the long run bring about efficiencies that will support those who are home. We can look at creating jobs for them. We can look at alternative paths to livelihoods, alternative livelihoods for them. We have this idea in Ghana that it is the government's responsibility to create jobs. You can call me what you want, but I believe that it is the government's responsibility to create an environment where jobs can be created. So the government's role is not to create jobs. It depends on which side of the economic ideology you hold. But generally, I feel that it is the government's job to create a facilitating environment, and then individuals create the jobs. We look at all the economies that are doing well around the world, even the Scandinavian economies. The government does not create jobs. The government empowers individuals and various entities to create jobs.
Some say for a developing nation such as Ghana, one of the ways of tackling unemployment would be, well, recruiting your own into the public sector.
To do what? What is the purpose of employment? To do what? Right? If we are to take them in just because we can say they have a job, then sure.
Well, at least your institutions are not fully built, so you still have that laxity to feed them in to correct or to build the systems that we need.
Absolutely,
right.
but for what purpose? What is the end game, so to speak? What is the end game? If we are just bringing in people just for hiring sake, we have a big problem. They should be making some contributions to the Ghanaian economy and the Ghanaian people as a whole. So if we are going to be bringing in people just because they need a job, we are making a big mistake.
Some say that given our economic situation, we should be doing that fast. I mean, the rationalization of the public sector.
Yeah.
How soon or how imminent should policymakers adopt that posture of just going into the public sector and cleaning up the roads?
Yesterday, because we again, there are opportunities. There have long been opportunities since Kwame Nkrumah's time, for us to open up the economy to the extent where individuals can promote economic growth. Again, I believe strongly in this idea that government supports development. The government does not develop by itself. So we can empower people. We can look at young people and create opportunities for them to enter into businesses or create their own businesses. The other day, I think I heard Joe White, the first deputy speaker, talk about the fact that the government doesn't create jobs. And I totally agree with him on that front. You know, that the government's role is to help many of us create jobs that would bring in or hire the young people and all the others who need jobs. You know, if we start thinking that it is an entitlement for the young people, and I'm pointing to myself now, that it is our entitlement, that the government should take care of us by creating jobs for us, but we are making a mistake. You know, people feel that they don't have to do anything. You know, and forgive me for perhaps going religious in this or taking a religious turn on this matter, where somebody could go to church 5 days a week praying for a good living. It's not going to happen.
Doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. You know, even God himself, he worked. When he was creating the world, he had to speak. He had to take Adam's rib. This is work. Could he not have just spoken to say, let there be a woman, and there would be a woman? Why did he have to set Adam to sleep and then take it? There is work. And those of us, the religious types, the Bible itself talks about the fact that he who the hand does not work should not eat. So if you decide that your only job is to go to work, is to go to church Mondays to Sunday and pray all you want, you can pray all you want. The days of manna are gone. See, we should be sitting in our businesses, our offices, our shops, our workplaces, working, and then backing it up with prayer. Rather than thinking that if you go to work by some means, you know, you're going to get whatever you need. No, it doesn't work that way. You see, so when we blame government, we blame other people, we blame everybody but ourselves, expecting, you know, I've seen things on radio, on television, where a pastor would tell people that they're going to receive money on their phones. Right. You know, so your mobile money thing is going to be stashed with some cash. Where from? Right? And we have to produce to be able to distribute. If we are hiring people who are not producing anything, what are we going to distribute for the rest of us?
I want to pick up on what you indicated earlier, the issue about creating the enabling environment.
Yes.
Some say, well, the opportunities are not there, and that's why you find the youth being despondent. So it's not far-fetched if people go on the usual blame game, blame government for not creating the employment. After all, the political class also promised these people jobs.
Oh, I don't want to get political. Well, I've said I didn't want to get religious, and I don't want to get political either. But I believe that there are going back to the sense of entitlement related to that, the government doesn't owe anybody a job. In fact, really, nobody owes anybody a job.
Really?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
But they promise the jobs.
I don't owe any, that's a political
Yeah,
thing.
right.
Yeah, I don't owe anybody a job. The government doesn't owe anybody a job. It is up to us as individuals looking for jobs to find them or create them. Right? And again, we can look at economic history around the world.
Prof, the statements you're making, quite
Yes.
a lot of people out there may not, really get
and
the
I
message.
stand by it.
Because you take a look at the manifesto of the political parties. That's the biggest selling factor for them.
Well,
they go
again,
all out and say, we'll give you the jobs when we come into power.
I agree, but that's what I'm saying.
And this is not just unique to one political party. All of them do this.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's a political decision. I'm not a
So would you ask the political class
politician.
to tone down on how they raise the hopes of the youth?
That's politics.
Right.
Yeah. So they can decide how they want to do that. Yeah. But I am not a politician. I'm speaking from a very pragmatic perspective. Yeah. I'm not going to promise anybody a job.
Right.
Because I don't think it is anybody's role to promise anybody a job. It is not my role. It is not the government's role to create these jobs. It is the individual. There is a certain kind of individual zeal, it's innate. I think it's innate.
Right.
Yeah, but we have not allowed that to manifest itself in our environment. We sent, this was in 2014, 2015, we sent some students to France on an exchange program. Right. They came back and we were having a conversation, and one of them told me that if he learned nothing, there was the fact that nobody owed him a job. In his first class, he is telling me this. Frank, if you're out there, he is telling me this. Yeah, and he says that at the first day of class, they were introducing themselves, and the lecturer was asking what they intended to do when they graduated. Yeah. And over 90% of the people in the class were thinking about jobs they were going to start when they left school. He was shocked coming from Ghana and hearing that nobody there was dependent on the government for a job. How did that happen? I mean, we talk of the government in Scandinavia in particular taking care of their citizens. But how many jobs do the government have, or how many businesses do these governments run? How many of them have said we are creating jobs, so you come directly to us for the job that we are creating for you? Right? We have to make the effort. All these entrepreneurs around the world, how did they come to be? If they depended on the government, would they be there? No. So we need to take action. We as individuals have to take the necessary action. The government supports, whichever government it is, supports that process. But I don't think it is the government's role to say, here is a job, come take it.
So let's talk about those who are still in the system. And I see that you read quite a lot. So this is the Daily Graphic, Tuesday.
Yes.
And the president is saying things must change.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is what the president is saying.
Yes.
And this is a direct
Yes.
message to the state-owned enterprises.
Right.
That brings me to my question. There's the view that the public sector is broken beyond repair. And so, I mean, you can talk all you want, you can act all you want. It's broken.
Yes, I'm an optimist. So without repair, I won't go there. It is broken, I agree. Without repair, I would not, because I like to see a little bit of light in every dark environment, that we can see beyond the darkness. So there is hope. There is a little bit of hope. But we need to have a certain commitment, to ensuring that. Now, these businesses were set up for a purpose.
Right.
Now, and here is the thing. Government creates a job, an entity,
right,
to operate as a private entity, to create jobs and raise money for the government as a source of our revenue. Yeah, one source of revenue for us. I don't see anything wrong with that, and which is why they have to be efficient, right? And you could read the disappointment in the president's face when he was talking to them, and then of course after that the public thing, they had to leave, and then I'm imagining what happened behind closed doors, right? It could be a very frank and difficult conversation. I can see leaders around the country doing similar things, right? It is broken, but there is hope. We can look at fixing it. If some of the problems that we are talking about, there is a certain lack of innovation in our public sector. I'll give you a typical GIMPA example. Right. We have embarked on a digitization agenda. Right. And so we are going paperless. Now, somebody had to go into one of our offices to register. And it was a manual registration, so they had to take their names before translating them or transferring them into the system. Somebody receiving such a request, the person standing in front of the lady asking, she said there was no paper, so she couldn't write it. Now, this is, for me, this is woefully unacceptable. Now, further investigation suggested, and I went asking that, what do you do with the list when it's written? Then they said, well, they write all the names, and then somebody then sits to type it into an Excel sheet, which is then a certain level of processes that they employ. My question is, what is wrong with typing the name directly into that Excel sheet? But for some reason, the person didn't see that they could find a way to not have to use the paper, because they have been told not to use paper. That was, for them, that was an end in itself. I would be asking myself in that situation, I'll be asking myself, how do I take the student's name without the paper? And it is a very simple thing. You take the paper, you go to the next stage, and it's there. See, and this is a very simple example to illustrate the point, that you go into many of our public institutions, and it's the same thing. There is a regime for activity, and many of us just stick to that activity. We don't seek variation.
And I'm glad that you're touching on the need for innovation and you're connecting that to GIMPA. But I want to pick on GIMPA, of course, because back in the 60s, 1960s, obviously, when the institution was being set up, the forebears had in mind the need to train public servants in a manner that will make the institutions run efficiently. So do you concede that, yes, you need to take a part of the blame if today we're talking about rots in the public sector?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we have not lived up to the fully to the mandate that was given to us in 1961. Right. We've come a very long way. We've done quite a good job, and we are continuing to try the best we can to ensure that. So on that front, yes. But on the other side, we can look at it this way. At some point, GIMPA was the only place civil servants or public servants came to be trained to go into the service. Now there are so many entities, so we do not totally control the system in that way. People are training left and right. There is the Institute of Local Government. There is just behind us here, there is the Foreign Service Institute of Foreign Service or Foreign Service Institute. And no, there is a school that has been set up to train people going into the foreign service. It's not affiliated to any university, as far as I know. So there are several other institutes. The civil service itself has its own training institute, and there are many others. So it's a shared responsibility. Now, the other part of it also on the no side is that we can teach ethics all we want. There is something in the individual that drives it. Part of it is our environment. You have to see what people are doing. You have to know what people are doing. And we learn by observation more than we do about reading. So if the people around us, which is a general sense of our culture, our work environments, if the people around us are misbehaving in a way, we might accept that as the norm and behave that way too. So when you isolate a group of people to behave in a certain way, they are likely to come out behaving that way. Relative to, you have this free environment, everybody does whatever he or she wants to do, and we are showing them all the bad things, so to speak.
So it's not entirely the problem of training?
No.
But I just want to stay on the GIMPA story a bit. in 61.
Yes.
Looking back then and now, obviously you may not have been there in charge of affairs.
I wasn't.
In 61.
I wasn't even born.
So there's the question about what's changed about GIMPA now.
A lot has changed. When we were set up, our first mandate was to train get people ready to support the nation, serve in the public service, because we had just recently gained independence from the British. They were dominant in the service and they were slowly leaving, and we needed replacement. So our job was to train people to fill in those shoes that were going to be vacant. As times have changed and the time has gone on, we have gone through 2 or 3 other mandates, and our latest mandate, spearheaded by Professor Stephen Adai in 2004, is an act that made us financially autonomous.
Right.
So we do not receive any funding from the government. Now, as part of that framework, what happened was that we became a university with more than just the public sector focus. So we have maintained the School of Public Service and Governance that provides training for the civil service. But we've also had to set up the business school, for instance, that helps us to raise a lot of money. There is the Faculty of Law, where we train lawyers, that also supports us. So we have 2 or 3 other schools that we work with. So it's no longer just focused on public sector.
The criticism has been, and I'm sure that you are quite conversant with that, the fact that you're shifting from the essence for which you have been instituted.
Yeah.
The feeling is GIMPA is more or less becoming the community for the elite. You've heard that now.
And more. I've heard that and more.
So how do you react to that?
I would say no, because it is not for the elite. We encourage anybody who is willing and able to come to us to join us. Now, we have embarked on a number of programs that is going to support those who are, to use your word, non-elite. We charge fees, yes, because that's the only way we survive, the fact that we don't receive subvention from the government and all that. So we have to charge fees. But if anyone would like to do the basic research, compare our fees to what is charged in the schools, universities that are funded by the government, and you see that there is virtually no difference, or in some cases we are cheaper than they are.
You're cheaper.
We are cheaper than they are. So the fee-paying students at the various other universities, and you can compare our prices.
The feeling is yours is relatively higher than the other public.
That's the feeling.
Universities.
Facts are stubborn things. We can look at them. Right? I don't want to mention names, but you can look at what we charge for our MBA program and look at how much others charge for the MBA programs.
So what do you say to prospective students who walk up to you? I'm sure you've met some of them, and they walk up to you and say, "Well, I had the intentions of applying, but my challenge is, well,
I didn't have the money." Well, let me start by answering that in a different way. We have scholarship programs that we run here. We are collaborating with a few other agencies to introduce other scholarships that we run here. My ideal situation, and I've said this publicly in many other, when I've had the opportunity in many other places, is that if I had my way, undergraduate education at GIMPA would be totally free. Undergraduate would be totally free. Because I feel that education as a foundation of this country should be accessible to everybody who is capable of going through it. Yeah. So we've initiated various things. We've set up an endowment fund with that purpose in mind, or at least part of the purpose in mind. We've initiated various scholarship programs with that in mind. All things being equal, in January, we are welcoming 75 to 100 students who are going to be coming to us, brilliant but needy students who would otherwise not be able to come to GIMPA, who are joining us for free. Individuals and organizations have committed to support us, and then we are also
How did you work that out?
It wasn't that complicated, if you ask me. I just talked to a few people around here over the years. We looked at there are students who have had to, or who were at the brink of leaving school at some point, and except by some, how do I put it? Yeah, we were able to support them in some way, and they stayed, and many of them have gone on to do very well in life, and that one moment of support is what changed their lives. On the radio, on television, you often hear about students who have excelled at their WASI exams and are still living the lives they led prior to that because they cannot afford to go to school. We would like to contribute to moving some of those students out of that situation. We know we cannot solve all the problems. To do that. So it's how we came to that idea, and I've been approaching various individuals. Thank you to all those who have agreed and contributed to our endowment fund and to supporting flagship program students who will be joining us in January. So it's just thinking through, talking to people, refining the idea, talking to people, refining, talking to people. So we're going to be having some wonderful students with us. And ideally, you know, over the next 5-6 years, we would have enough support that all the students can come in for free.
Prof, let's wrap up by starting off, or I mean, by ending on the notes on which we started, the Auditor General's report.
Yes.
It's been cross-cutting.
Yeah.
It's not just restricted to the conventional state institutions that we normally focus on in terms of efficiency. There's also this time around the focus on the academia. I was surprised to find out that premium universities, some of them well-renowned, were running programs that were not accredited. You talk about the University of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, programs in excess of 300, right, that the Auditor General is telling us about, that these programs were not accredited. So when we are talking about inefficiency, some would say, let's also try and sanitize academia. Are you open to that idea?
The idea of sanitizing academia, yes, but if there is something to sanitize, that's the question. Okay. Now, I know the fourth or fifth estate, you know, the media plays a significant role in the establishment and maintenance of our democracy, totally. But sometimes we have to be careful, the sensationalism. Yeah. For instance, let me take a medical program. I'll get directly to your point, but let me take the medical program at KNUST. They were there before the accreditation system began. They've produced some very good doctors. Are we saying that all those programs, because they were not accredited then, you know, we should withdraw all those doctors because the program was not accredited? I would argue not. All right. So we have to, I don't know how many in the media have actually gone to KNUST or to any of the other universities to investigate what the real issue is. Sometimes the auditor's report is a bit, what is the word? It facilitates sensationalism to a certain degree, and we have to be cautious of that in playing your role, which I don't dispute at all. We have to be careful how we do it. Apart from the international reputational risk that the story that has been doing the rounds in the media has to present, it also indicates a certain level of inefficiencies where there are none. There is a process for accreditation. So our programs, for instance, accreditation is 3 to 5 years depending on the program. So you get accreditation. If I apply for accreditation today, the program is running. It hasn't ended. The accreditation hasn't run out. And it takes me 2 years to get that accreditation process completed. In the interim, am I supposed to stop all those programs and wait until the 3rd or 4th year when I get that accreditation? Maybe not. See, there are issues in the system that we have to fix. And certainly they have to be fixed.
Is that really a challenge with the accreditation system? I mean, your view?
It's partly. Right. Yeah. So you cannot, in 3 years, you do a jinamuafono, right? There are issues with both sides of but the way it is handled is what I'm talking about.
So what would you want to see change in the accreditation regime that we have now?
Well, talking about efficiencies. Now, I had issues, and that was before the merger, GTech was formed. I had issues with accreditation, and since 2018, I have refused, and I say this publicly. This is the first time I'm saying this publicly. I have refused to be part of that process because of certain inefficiencies that I saw. If our role is to ensure that we get the best quality of education for our students, and some of us are playing that role, we should not be undermined in any way by the system that at least what I knew to be in place in 2018. So we go in there, the process works in a way that a panel of experts are selected, they go to a place, do an assessment, and then bring a report back. The report is supposed to guide the accreditation board in making a determination as to whether to renew or issue a license or accreditation or whatever it is that they're supposed to do. And on more than one occasion, when the committee that we had gone into to do the assessment made a recommendation against a particular program, the program was accredited to be run the way it was to be run, or they had proposed to run it, when all the members of the panel felt that it wasn't right, it wasn't ready, that there was the need for some adjustments to be made before the program was ready. Right? So this is just one aspect of it. But when it comes to going back to the issue of Auditor General reporting and all that, the fact that the paper is not ready doesn't mean that the program is bad.
Certainly feel free to watch a playback of my interaction with Professor Bonso on all of our platforms at My Joy Online and all of our social media handles. But for now, it's time to focus on health. The World Health Organization is reporting that heart diseases and stroke, cancers, diabetes and respiratory diseases now outnumber infectious diseases as the top killer factors globally, accounting for some 74% of all deaths. Now, these conditions are mostly due to the modifiable risk factors, which include tobacco use, unhealthy diet, physical interactivity, and harmful use of alcohol and air pollution. Speaking at the launch of Stop Non-Communicable Diseases, co-directors of Research Center, Professor Irene Japon and Professor Tulip Musrev, spoke about their plans to end non-communicable diseases.
Phase 1, which will be the first year of this work, will deepen our knowledge of country context and synthesize and contextualize available evidence. So this will be the focus of our work in the first year, which starts from 1st October 2022 through to 30th September 2023. In phase 2, which is year 2 of our effort, we will work closely with key stakeholders, drawing on the evidence we have generated in year 1 to co-produce content-specific intervention packages covering community-based prevention and facility-based care. In phase 3, which is year 3 to 5 of the project, we will now pilot, test, implement, and evaluate the interventions which we have generated together in phase 1 and 2. Pilot testing will involve formative evaluation using mixed methods and summative evaluation. Examples of outcome measures that we are going to be interested in are treatment, utilization, access, adherence, access to prescribed medication, blood pressure, and blood sugar monitoring and control.
An independent committee, scientific committee, will provide scientific advice, and in-country multi-stakeholder groups will review feasibility of our research plans.
And we are asking to what extent is peace-building operations run by the African Union and conceptualized, actually implemented in ways that are less coercive and more cooperative than traditional missions dominated by Western powers. The answers will be found at the end of a 3-day workshop by the Peace Research Institute, Frankfurt Institute for Peace and Security, and the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, aimed at creating a space for exchange on the role of coercion in peace building. Speaking at the open day of the workshop, member of the executive board of the Peace Research Institute of Frankfurt, Sabine Mantes, explained to JoyNews what they hope to achieve and the impact.
At the Peace Research Institute Frankfurt, we are studying aspects of coercion for a couple of years already, and the effects that coercive moments may render on peace and peace-building efforts. So the debate surrounding peace-building is that it has come into crisis, the liberal project, so to speak, in particular, and one of the perspectives that we find promising in order to find out why peace-building maybe does not work or is even supposed to fail in some instances is that there might be too much coercion involved, or maybe also too little coercion. So we think that this is an aspect that is really, well, it deserves more attention in order to find clues about peace building that actually works, because that's also what our institute is devoted to, researching paths into peace that work. We are interested in gathering the different strands of research and also experiences. So we are not a think tank in Germany that only works on theories and develops desk studies, but we want to collect experiences from the field. So it's not that we favor, let's say, a particular traditional approach, but we want to discuss experiences from different fields and listen to practitioners and scholars and then assess the whole landscape. One outcome is that we hope to get into closer collaboration also for, I mean, not just for these 3 days, but also in the future to maybe develop common research perspectives and projects in order to also integrate other scholars' perspectives into our work and make this a fruitful collaboration, not just for one workshop or conference. We are very grateful for being able to meet here because we
Well, and that's all we have for you here on the package in terms of the polls, and we'll definitely see you again next week. I'm Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. We have more stories for you there next.